Okay, so this one is moral anti-realism. So we've looked at moral realism, and now we're looking at moral anti-realism. Um, and as it says in the name, it's anti-real. The clue's there, really, in that they don't believe that there is an objective moral truth for us to discover. Unlike moral realism, who believe that there is a morality. In whichever way we discover it, we can intuit, we can discover it, but that morality exists, objective, independent, mind independent morality exists. But anti-realists disagree with that. They say there's no such thing. And so what we call morality, we need to start thinking about, well, what are we actually talking about when we're using the phrase morality? And there are three different anti-realist theories. And so there's error theory by Mackey, emotivism by Eyre, and prescriptivism by Hare. Okay, so starting off with the error theory, and there are two main arguments. They are the arguments in relativity and queerness. So relativity, first of all, is it's a simple argument that people have used time and time again. So you look at different cultures around the world, and there is a different morality from culture to culture. And what is accepted in one culture isn't accepted in another culture. And so by all standards, we look at that and we would actually go, yeah, there is no objective moral standard because of relativity. Obviously, some people would say, well, simply because there's a different morality from one culture to another culture, it might be that one culture has discovered the objective morality and the other one hasn't. But for Mackey, that's not acceptable because the differences are so extreme from culture to culture. Each individual culture or tribe even would look at another a tribe that is close by in the next valley and would disagree with their version of morality. Even if you looked in the UK, you might think that we all have a very similar standard of morality, but we don't. You go to different parts of this particular country and you will find lots of different cultures. And I'm not just talking about cultures from different countries, but cultures of people who have been born and bred here for centuries. And they will have totally different standard of morality. And then we come to the argument of queerness, which we're talking about is strange. Mackey argued the very queerness or oddness of moral objects, their properties, and how we access should make us skeptical about objective moral values. So he's saying, well, if these moral values do exist, then there's something very strange about them. And first of all, there's epistemically queer. How do we know about these non-natural properties? Knowledge of natural properties, physical properties, we can use science, we can use our rational reasoning, we can use our senses to discover these mind-independent natural objects. But when it comes to non-natural properties, how are we going to actually access, how are we going to gain knowledge of it? There's something epistemically queer, strange, odd about that. The next one is metaphysically queer, but easier to say. And so really, it's this nature of this moral object is going to be very, very strange because there's a built-in to-do-ness within that object. When you look at a table, there's nothing built in that we should do with that table. It's just a table. There's nothing that is making us do something because that table exists. But when it comes to morality, an independent, objective morality, there is some kind of to-do-ness built into those objects. And that's very queer because there's nothing like it in the rest of nature as far as we're aware. So it's epistemically queer and metaphysically queer. You can use strangeness or oddness for queerness if you prefer, but we need to be aware of these particular terms. So the ontological claim, therefore, from Mackey and the error theory is that there are no objective moral values. Now, we've looked at Kant, Bentham, Mill, Aristotle. They believe there are objective moral values, and I've got them there on the PowerPoint. Categorical imperative for Kant, happiness and prevention of suffering, Bentham, Mill, and eudaimoniae for Aristotle. So they believe these are objective moral values that we can move towards. But for the ontological claim from Mackey is that these don't exist. So the relativity and queerness of moral objects are arguments against moral naturalism. Now, there's a linguistic claim. So when people use moral language, use it in a way which implies moral objectivity and a prescription of how we should behave. For Mackey, that's a mistake. It isn't a mistake to actually say that we shouldn't be influencing the world around us, okay, and misunderstanding moral terms. The mistake comes from that these moral objects simply do not exist in the first place. So we are referring to a high authority that simply isn't there, simply does not exist. And that's where the mistake comes from. Instead, morality is formed by so many different factors, from tradition, history, societal factors, family factors, psychological factors, and so morality, and this is why morality changes throughout the world and throughout different tribes, because all of these different influences affect what we think morality actually is. So the error, therefore, is that people think that when they are giving a moral statement that they are referring to a moral objective fact, when actually it doesn't exist. So therefore, every moral statement has to be false because you are referring to something that doesn't exist. So clearly it has to be false. Now, he is anti-realist because moral objectivity does not exist. But he's the one that is different from all the others. He is still a cognitivist because we are generally describing the world with our moral judgments. It's just that we're wrong all the time. Every single moral statement is wrong. Now, emotivism, second theory. We need to quickly revisit the verification principle, okay? So we've got these two: analytic a priori, logic, reason, 2 + 2 = 4, triangle has 3 sides, a bachelor is an unmarried man, all that kind of stuff. Synthetic, a posteriori, using our senses. It is raining, it is hot. I use my senses to discover whether that is a fact, whether it's true or false. Okay, and so now the verification principle is something we are going to come back to when we look at language, religious language. So A.J. Ayer is an incredibly influential philosopher in the 20th century. Now, for A.J. Ayer, moral statements cannot be verified. There is nothing that we could do analytically to say, for example, if you take abortion, abortion is right or wrong. There is nothing we can do analytically to say whether abortion is right or wrong. There is nothing we can do synthetically to say, using our senses to say abortion is right or wrong. We might be able to say, analytically, using our reason, a fetus or isn't a human being, or it can feel pain from a certain point onwards. These are all scientific facts that we can actually say, but in terms of morality, there is nothing that we can verify as to whether it is good or bad. So they are meaningless statements. Moral statements are meaningless. That's an important point to make here. He's not saying that moral statements are right or wrong, but that they are simply meaningless because they cannot be verified. So for Ayer, when we make a moral statement, we're simply expressing an emotion towards a subject. It's been derogatorily called the boo-hurrah theory or hurrah-boo theory. So, for example, eating meat is good, hurrah, eating meat is bad, boo. It literally is, you walk around the house with nothing on your feet, you step on a pin and you go, ouch. It's literally that kind of response to morality is A.J. Ayer. Now, following on from A.J. Ayer, agreed with a lot of A.J. Ayer was saying, but he believed there was an element of prescriptivism within that. So he was developing it. All the words discussed, that is right, good, and ought, have it as a distinctive function, either to commend or in some other way to guide choices or actions. Here, now, prescriptivism is very simply, you have a prescription, you carry out a prescription. If you're ill, you go to the doctors and they give you a prescription, and the prescription is that you carry out the instructions that are in that prescription, or whatever it is that you need to do to make yourself better. And so actually, when we are making moral statements, what we are actually doing is that we are giving a command. We are expecting other people to agree with us. We're expecting other people to change their behavior. So when we're saying, the last one, abortion is bad, boo for air, Hare would develop that as that abortion is bad, therefore we should not allow abortions to take place, or only up to a certain amount in weeks of development of the fetus. And so now, like I say, like with the other theories, Hare disagree with moral naturalism and finding moral terms in natural facts. Moral statements are meant to express something other than emotion, though. So yes, emotion is involved, but it is about giving a command. It's making sure that actually you are trying to change a behavior rather than just going hurrah and boo. And there's an element of universality. So that what I agree with here in this particular country is also going to be valid in another place. We know what universality is. So the main differences between emotivism and prescriptivism then. Emotivism was moral language to influence others emotionally. Prescriptivism was moral language to guide, and we should be able to offer reasons for our instruction. So emotivism is often like whoever shouts the loudest wins. And then for you are just basically engaging other people's emotions. There's no rationality behind it whatsoever, where prescriptivism, yes, emotion is involved, but there must be a way of being able to rationalize it as well, offer reasons for our instruction, to persuade other people to agree with you, to change their behavior. Universality is essential for the logic of moral judgments. It requires for there to be some rational thought behind the prescription. There is no rational thought behind an emotive judgment. So they're the main differences between the two. So they are the moral anti-realist arguments. You've got the error theory of J. Mackey. You have got emotivism with error based, following on from the verification principle. Don't forget that verification principle was based on the teachings of David Hume. And then we have prescriptivism.